on the drive, goes inside the floater. Turn him over again. Booker scoops it up. Booker brings the boom.
Yes, Friday. We're bringing the boom. NBA Hardwood winners on a Friday night. We got 7 games over on DraftKings, so it's not too long of a slate. It's locks basically everything in an hour. So Big T will be happy. I'm sure he'll have the cores up for you guys. And excited that the slate is over fast. But DC, how are you doing? And are you ready for some Friday night NBA?
Of course, always ready for yet another NBA slate here. Pretty good one, 7 games like you mentioned on DraftKings, 10 games on FanDuel. Got a grind coming for you on FanDuel if you are playing over there. I know both of us are. But yeah, 7 games on DK. A lot of news coming down the pipeline, of course, over the next couple of hours and into the slate. But a lot of it is in those kind of first 2 games of the night, or two of the first 2 games of the night anyway. So in Boston and Philadelphia. So we'll see how those games kick off the slate, go from there. And yeah, hopefully by the end of it, have some good lineups out there.
Yep. Smash the like if you're getting in here. We appreciate it. You're right, though. I was looking at the injury report, and there's a laundry list of guys in the first couple of games. And, of course, it kind of dwindles down. And guys we kind of feel like we have a decent read on, or situations where it's like, I don't know, if Cole Anthony or KCP are in or out, who really cares, right? Is it that big of a deal? It's not a massive deal. And we have news that we already know about, like Donovan Mitchell, of course. So it's really the early stuff. So we will obviously have to circle back a little bit to that. We got P. Lally's got one of those NFBC drafts. DC, how many of those drafts have you done? Did you do one in Vegas when you were there, or are you doing any online?
Actually, 0 this year so far, and taking a step back from NFBC just to focus on, more sports betting opportunities, and then DFS mostly, where I got to the point where it was like the fab aspect of it every Sunday night after a week of grinding baseball just got to be a lot. So I actually took a step back from that, but I do know what P. Lally is talking about. 50 round, it's a draft champions. You keep your players for the whole year. 15 teams, so 750 players drafted in those. It is a long night that Mr. Lally's in store for. I've done a few of those over the course of the years.
I know the real reason you are yielding to the NFBCs. You're yielding to the siege. You know he's taking every single one down. Right? He's a big fan of those. Am I right?
Yeah, he is an NFBC guy for sure. So yeah, siege. Yet another victory over me in the ring. NFBC, you name it, he's got it.
Speaking of siege, are you going to challenge him for bracketologist rankings this year? I know we're around the corner, DC. You got to send a tweet like Sunday night or Monday, like bracketologist wise, right?
There'll probably be a bracketologist or 2 tweets out there. I don't know if I go a year without poking the bear at least once or twice. So I'm sure that'll be the case. But we'll keep the college basketball content. We'll leave that to Boyden, right? We'll keep that to a minimum on the timeline.
Of course. I just want to make sure like you're thinking of something this weekend so you can fire something on Sunday, or, even on Thursday when the tournament starts. Of course, we have content for you there. If you want to use that code Steve15, get you 15% off. I know he's in Vegas right now having a good time, and then he'll be, working even harder once the tournament comes with tons of free videos. So if you subscribe to the channel, you'll be able to check those out. I'm sure there'll be bracket ones, DFS ones. So check all those out if you are interested in that. But all right, let's get to NBA. 7 games to discuss, a lot of different injury stuff to break down. The first 2 games, like I said, 7 o'clock Eastern. It's Celtics, Heat, and Pacers and Sixers. Tons of injury news. Kind of hard to break it down. DC, do you want to dive into these games, or do we want to circle back to the 7 o'clock games at the end of the show? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, let's go back because, Celtics, they're missing questionable are Porzingis, Brown, Tatum, and White. So, I mean, there's just no way to really talk about the Celtics. And then kind of the same thing with Philly, right? They've got a couple important pieces, Grimes and Oubre, Drummond too, where you just kind of have to know whether they're in or out before you can talk about those teams. So makes sense to skip those and circle back.
And not only that, Pascal Siakam, he's questionable as well. I mean, it's just a laundry list today for those first couple games, and important ones. It's not like it's just like some bums off the bench. They're clear high usage guys that change the entire slate. And if they're all in, that changes your opinion on, hey, maybe I'm not going to play any of those guys, right? If all the Celtics were in, I wouldn't be excited to play them against the Heat. So that's something to obviously look at. Let's get to the Clippers and the Atlanta Hawks. That's the first game. Well, it's the one game that's on an island at 7:30. Worth kind of calling out. 4 games will be locking at 8 o'clock Eastern, but this game is sandwiched between the first 2 and then the last 4. Definitely a good game, right? DC, I mean, whenever Atlanta's on a slate, that's one of those teams like, all right, we got to target them. We're going to like guys on that side of the ball for sure. And of course, we got the Clippers to discuss, which the Clippers definitely have been a team to kind of get some exposure to throughout this year. Norman Powell has been injured, and honestly, they've had guys in and out of the lineup that are high usage guys, right? Kawhi's been in and out of the lineup, of course. The 2 staples have been James Harden, of course, and Mr. Zubac. These guys both project really well in this spot. Zubac, Kawhi, and Harden all are looking to be above 15% ownership, and for good reason. I think they're all really good plays. They are all priced up. Zubac 8.6, Kawhi 8.7, and Harden 10.5K. Then, of course, we got the Atlanta Hawks side of the ball, which we got to discuss. All these guys will be below 10%. Georges Niang, he's looking like he's the highest on the Hawks side at 4.1K. We've definitely seen him, play a little bit better without Clint Capella in that lineup. I've always been an Onyeka Okongwu guy and talked him up. 7-4 against Zubac is not really super enticing in a matchup against this Clippers team where they're not a super fast-paced team. Yes, the Hawks kind of dictate the pace, but I do think it's getting to be a lot for Okongwu in this spot. Yes, I think he still has a ceiling, but I'm going to be cautious with him at 7-4. I've slammed him all the time at 6-1 and 6-2, but don't love that price. Dyson Daniels, 7-3. We know what his steal block upside can be. And, of course, Mr. King of the Court from Wednesday, Trae Young, 10.4K. DC, I'm looking more at maybe Hawks values, but honestly, by the time this slate gives us all the news, I could see myself being almost completely off the Hawks and then just mainly on the expensive Clippers options. But what is your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I echo kind of what you said in that last sentiment where, right now, the Hawks values look fine. And if, everyone that's questionable on the slate ended up playing, then the Hawks values would maybe look pretty good. But that's just not going to be obviously what happens on a bigger slate like we have tonight. We are going to get players ruled out. We are going to get values that pop, both, foreseeable and oftentimes maybe not so much. So we think we're going to have some decent values in those first 2 games, right? There's a reason we skipped those 2 games because we are probably going to have players to talk about that we want to play. So most likely we'll have some players on our roster. Most players will, I think, from the first 2 games of the night. Then you mentioned this one is on the island in between the first 2 games and then the next set. So unless you really like players from this game, maybe they're less likely to make your roster. I think that's kind of true on the Atlanta side. Not planning to end up on a ton there. Guys like Ricochet look fine, Niang if you want to. But again, probably not locking into those values unless it looks like there's not going to be a whole bunch that pops later. Clippers side is more interesting. I think all 3 of their guys, I mean, they have obviously a clear big 3 right now, right? With Powell out, when they have Harden, Kawhi, Zubac, all putting up 40-plus regularly when they're in the lineup. And I'd expect the same thing to happen tonight. I think all 3 of these guys have solid games, but at their price tags, right? I mean, you're talking over 10 for Harden, 8.7 for Kawhi, and 8.6 for Zubac. Max 2 of those 3 on any one lineup, I would think. And I even probably prefer to pick one. Do you have a favorite between those 3 if you really had to kind of lock in on one for one lineup?
Yeah, there's no one guy that sticks out. I will say that. If you force me to pick, I think I'd lean Kawhi, as crazy as that sounds. It does feel a little pricey at 8.7K, but forward just normally sucks, right? And I'm assuming we'll get good guard value where it will help me get up to there. Also, someone's asking about Harden's ownership in the chat. Harden is kind of like the highest owned expensive guy right now. I mean, I'm seeing him and LaMelo Ball both around like 17% as the highest ones. To be fair, Miles Bridges at 9K, or 9.1, he's getting about like 21%, but there is a difference in that price tag for sure. I think the ownership could definitely shift if we get a lot of guard value that kind of emerges. It depends who's in it now. You know what I mean? Like, let's say Jaylen Brown is out and Tatum's in. Well, everyone's going to want to pay for Tatum, right? Because of the usage there. It's going to obviously boost his projection up. So hard to make a decision for me right now. DC, my lean is Kawhi just because forward is typically a weak spot. Is that kind of your similar opinion?
I think so too. Yeah, Kawhi, probably my favorite of the bunch. But I do think it's close between all three. And I guess kind of depends on where the value shakes out, right? Is it at the forward, guard, or center spot? Could ultimately dictate where you go. Do you agree you don't want to play? I mean, all three on the same lineup would seem like too much, but even two seems like maybe a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I think by the time like the slate like shakes out, I think it's going to be unnecessary to go two. So yeah. I'm not trying to load up on them. I want to get exposure though, right? Like they're clearly in good spots, you know. Yeah. And I am worried about the Hawks. Do you have any opinion on the Okongwu price now? Because like, don't get me wrong, Okongwu, if he gets 50, if he gets 50 points, DK points at 7.4K, you're definitely signing up for that. But like, I do think the price has gotten to the point where it's a little more uncomfortable. What do you think?
I mean, just even in the same game, I would way rather pay 8.6 for Zubac than 7.4 for Okongwu. So I'm with you for now. I think that's a little steep, especially not that great of a matchup against Atlanta. So I'm off Okongwu and really most of the Hawks. I don't really plan to play tonight.
All right, good stuff. Let's get on over to the next game. Starting at 8 o'clock, Dallas and Houston. And if you just joined us, we skipped the first two games. You're not, 3-4 games behind. So we skipped the first two games just because we're going to want to circle back with the injury news. Dallas and Houston, though. Yes, there is injury news here, DC. PJ Washington, Brandon Williams, Kai Jones, and Dante Exum. And I really think PJ Washington and Brandon Williams, that's a pretty big piece of news. And hard to definitely dissect exactly what we need to do in this spot with those guys, because if one is in and one is out, that's going to kind of shake up what we want to do with the slate. But regardless, the Mavs look like they're in play. Now, if all those guys are healthy, you could make a little bit of an argument that I don't know if we want to get to these guys as much, right? Like some of the prices have gone up. Like Klay Thompson is now 6'5". And if you tell me PJ Washington's in, okay, well, he's going to steal a little bit from it. Najee Marshall, listen, Najee Marshall has had like a 40 projection, and he was 7'5". He's 8K now. Like, we are not getting any more discounts on these guys, and the Mavs could get a little bit healthier. So for me, yes, I think the injury news matters, but these guys that have been playing, I'm currently going to be a little cautious on them. Even Brandon Williams at 5'5", like if he is in and PJ Washington, I know he's been playing good basketball. I have some interest, but again, I have to think a little bit about it. I need PJ probably to be out to consider him. PJ Washington's price tag, he's 7'3". I mean, we were paying 7'3" very happily for him when they had Kyrie and they had Gaffer. I mean, it could be a spot where he just emerges and plays really, really well. So overall, DC, I know I went all over the place with Dallas, but whoever's in and out does kind of matter here. And we have to be a little bit of price sensitivity when we look at Najee Marshall at 8K.
Yeah, I was joking on Wednesday back from a little vacation about the sticker shock of the 7,500 Najee Marshall. I couldn't pay it on Wednesday. He disappointed there, and I can't pay it tonight either. Another $500 at 8K for Najee Marshall, just ridiculous. Maybe he'll have an awesome game. Won't be on my roster. Honestly, I'll say the same thing about Klay Thompson. I know he's had some good games as well, but I'm not paying $6,500 in a relatively tough matchup on the road going into Houston. Just not for me. So a lot of it does depend on the Williams news. He played last game, so I assume he'll be back in there. Missed one game with a sore hamstring, came back last game, played well, put up another 36 fantasy points. I actually don't think he's the craziest play, assuming he's in there, Brandon Williams. I don't think people will want to pay that, but he's doing it night after night. They clearly need the scoring. They need his aggressiveness. They're really lacking in that department. So, yeah, I actually think Brandon Williams pretty fun play that I assume most people won't get to. You're not going to really, he's not a good enough play to like save a spot for specifically. So he'll probably go under owned. I don't mind that as what I assume will be a contrarian play. And in the Houston side, I kind of like the 3 forwards on Wednesday, Eason, Jabari Smith, and Brooks. And yeah, Smith was disappointing, but Eason had a strong game. And Dylan Brooks, I feel like you and I have both kind of turned the page with him where we weren't fans, but in this like 4,500 to 5K range that he seems to live on both sites all season long, I find myself playing a lot of Dylan Brooks. You've got like the seemingly nice floor of like, it seems like 20 to 25, and then he'll pop off for those 40 plus more often than you think. So he's always a guy on my short list. It seems like you're kind of on the same page with Dylan Brooks.
Yeah, I've definitely turned the page a little bit on him, and I'll admit his antics have stopped, right? He's just balling out. He fits this team.
Yeah,
he fits the team well. And the other thing, too, is they give him those corner threes, right? Like because they're just so stacked with like all these different great players that can score. Well, he's the option, right? That gets a lot of open shots, and that's where the ceiling hits when he hits those 3-pointers. Like, I mean, against the Pelicans, he shot 7 for 11 from 3. I mean, against Orlando, he had 9 attempts, right? He had 9 against Indy. Like, there's attempts there. It's like he clearly puts up a ton of shots, and you can't ignore it. So I'm with you, especially in a matchup against the Dallas Mavericks. Like, you could certainly see him pop off there and have a pretty good game. So I don't mind the DC, especially if we don't get value. I mean, I think we're going to get value, but I like to chase those ceilings. It's why I talked about a Kongwu at like 6.1K so much. I was like, listen, I want to chase after these ceilings. It's why I mentioned like a Miles Turner who like at 6'2" has the ability to get 40 plus DK points. Like a Brook Lopez yesterday at 5'4" got 47 DK points last night, I believe, for JT Hayes, who was his play of the day. Like, those ceilings are very valuable in the mid-tier that I think some people ignore sometimes, and I don't think it should be ignored. All right. Anything else on Houston? I saw the chat talking about Şengün a little bit, and he's 9.9K right now, DC, and like he does not seem like a guy that I love his upside at that price tag. Do you kind of agree there? Yeah,
it seems a little excessive for Şengün. What about Brandon Williams? I see our guy Kreitzen kind of interested there. 1% ownership. I mean, look what he's doing game after game. I assume he doesn't project that well at 5,500, but I think he's a decent play.
Yeah, I agree. I think he can get there. Do you like him even if PJ Washington is in and Dante Exum? Like, does that change it for you? Because I could see routes where like the minutes aren't there as much, but also, listen, if he gets the minutes, the dude is not afraid to chuck. He's going to just keep putting the shots up.
Yeah, it's hard to say for sure, but they're still thin, and given how well he's played, I don't know. Seems like they give him his 25 minutes, but yeah, you could be right.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to think about. I know the Caleb Martin minutes restriction is something to watch. It's been between 15 and 20. He had 20 the past 2 games. Obviously, once he gets up to 25 or 28, that could take away from someone to think about, but I'm with you. Like, I'm not ruling it out of the question, right? Like, I'm not kicking Brandon Williams out of my player pool at this moment. I do think he is definitely in a good spot. So, all right, let's keep moving this thing along. Let's get to the Orlando Magic and the Minnesota Timberwolves. I want to do everything to not talk about LaMelo Ball, but he is definitely a talking point on this slate for sure. So, Ann Edwards. Actually, DC, here's a good question for you. I heard this stat today. I didn't stat check it, but I heard it on a radio show. The Minnesota Timberwolves, with Julius Randle in their last 11 games, do you know what their record is?
No, I don't know, but I know it's good. They've been playing well, right?
They're 11-0 with Julius Randle in the last 11 games, which I don't know who they've played, but like it is worth calling out that everyone that was shitting on the Julius Randle thing, it's turned the corner a little bit for sure. So. But yeah, Julius Randle definitely has helped the team as of recent. I don't think you can ignore that. His price has been cheap. Right now, he's up to 7.8, right? That's gone up from being like 6.2, as crazy as that was. And Edwards at 9.5. I'll call this out too, DC. If we lose Jason Tatum, we're going to lose studs on this slate. So how does Ann Edwards not enter the conversation of at least someone that could be in play? One of the reasons could be is, hey, with Julius Randle stealing that usage and a matchup against the Orlando Magic, like hey, that's not an ideal spot to take studs. So you could make a case to not really get on an Ant Edwards tonight. Of course, they're more crowded. The Naz Reid 7-1 seems ridiculous. Rudy Gobert, 6.3K. They got Dante DiVincenzo back at 5'8". This does seem like one of the tougher games to play in this 8 o'clock window. And then on the opposite side, listen, I'm not trying to target the Minnesota Timberwolves that much, especially with Rudy Gobert back, which helps him a ton. Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, those are two guys we paid for at forward today. But I'm going to admit, DC, I'm not dying to get to these guys today. I know they could be missing Cole Anthony. That might change my tune a little bit, but I think this is a good game to be under on unless you're going up to like a Franz Wagner or Banchero. And I honestly think we can make a better case for Kawhi Leonard and some other spend-up forwards. But what's your overall thoughts here, DC?
Yeah, I agree with you for the most part. Orlando seems like Banchero or Franz Wagner, but not a lot else there. And I mean, Minnesota, unless I'm forgetting someone, do they have like a fully healthy team at this point? I think they might. I think they might have literally like everyone from the beginning of the year that they would have hoped to have healthy and ready to go, which obviously hasn't been the case. They've been missing Randall. Rudy Gobert's missed time. DiVincenzo's missed time. But they got everybody back now, I think. The Wolves do, which makes them a hard team to roster. We saw Naz Reid's price. I mean, he was like what is he, sitting around like 4,800 a lot of the time. He's all the way, got up to 8K, 7,100 now. Randall's not cheap. We saw Edwards' price climb during Randall's absence. So you're just looking at the Wolves, and I don't really see anybody that looks particularly underpriced on that side of the ball. I mean, maybe you could make a case for Rudy Gobert, but I'm never excited to play him at 6,300. Not that exciting tonight either against Orlando. So Minnesota looks like an easy cross-off to me with the entire squad healthy. And in Orlando, yeah, like I said, Banchero or Franz seem like good plays, but not a ton of interest elsewhere. Obviously, I have to pay attention to that Cole Anthony news. Could change a little bit, but overall, probably not going to end up with much from this one.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Sounds like the chat's happy with you. No need for negative shit here, DC.
You let the razzing go, and you can get away with like 1 or 2 or 3, but you just keep going, and it's like, okay, at this point, you're just like kind of asking for it. So, yeah,
yeah, and I mean, we're trying to do a show, right? Like, we're trying to pay attention to the chat to be helpful, and it's like when you keep reading the same shit over and over, like it just gets old.
And honestly, if the insults were funny, that would be one thing, like something clever, but it wasn't working out.
Yeah, you gotta be clever with it, right? Yeah. So that's how it's got to go. But all right, so overall, guys, we don't like this game. We want to be lower on it. DC, if I told you, and I think this is good, I don't know if everyone's an MME guy or not, or if you use an optimizer, but what if 2 Timberwolves got pushed onto your teams? Would you not want that and only want a max of 1 of each side on this game? I mean, for me, I kind of lean that. I don't really want to be overexposed to this game. So I feel like I would, and I don't normally put a max of 1, but if that was something I looked for, I think I would do that.
I can't think of a combination of 2 Timberwolves that I'd be happy to have, It's like,
yeah.
I don't want like Randall and Edwards or Reed and Randall or Reed and there's just no way. So yeah, I think max 1.
What about Orlando? Like, I think the only route I would consider is one of Banchero and Franz, and then it would have to be a value, and it would have to be like maybe one of Cole Anthony or KCP is out. Like, let's say KCP's out. Maybe then it's like a cheap value. But again, I'm not like dying to get to those plays, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, if you have too much of this last game, I have a hard time imagining it's, your lineup's going to really pop off, but you never know.
Yep, with you on that. And it's only a 7-game slate, but like I said, we're going to get some really good value that seems like it's going to emerge. We also feel like we're going to get other good value. And, hey, we already have guys that are already out. And let's get to this next game. I want to talk about Charlotte and the Spurs because I actually think this game in particular, it's definitely a big talking point because I'll tell you this, Miles Bridges, what he has been doing has been insane, right? Like, I know a lot of people were like struggling to pay for him once LaMelo Ball came back and Mark Williams. They were struggling to pay for him at like 8.4. He is now 9.1K. You look at his game logs, and I'm not trying to be a game log chaser, but people look at them and, if they've treated you well, right? People go back to them. But 64 DK points, 54, 54, and 66. And 2 of those matchups were Miami and Cleveland, not ideal spots. And, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to do with this price tag and the ownership. Not only that, DC, I hate playing LaMelo Ball. It's a great matchup against the San Antonio Spurs, who now are missing De'Aaron Fox for the season, along with someone like Wemby. I mean, 9.8K at like, I don't know, 17% ownership. I'm not that interested in it, and I get it. I'm definitely a hater of LaMelo Ball. I try to stay away from when he gets ownership. You look at Mark Williams, 7.6. He's coming in at 10% ownership. So clearly there's ownership in this game. Stephen Castle, who's trying to get that rookie of the year with no De'Aaron Fox, he's going to get a boost. A Devin Vassell clearly would get a boost. Chris Paul, 4.9K. If the minutes are there, clearly there's usage to go around. You got a Jeremy Sokan who could take up some usage, playing some point forward at 4.9. And it's a matchup against the Charlotte Hornets. And in a matchup against the Charlotte Hornets, we always like big men. I'm not saying I'm playing Bismack Biyombo, but I don't know. I don't think it's the craziest thing. It's a revenge game for Biyombo too, if you care. But DC, I really think we got to talk about this game in particular because I think it's one of the more important games on the slate right now.
Yeah, so Charlotte, DFS-wise, is structured like pretty much the exact same as the Clippers, right? They've got the expensive elite point guard, LaMelo and Harden on the two teams respectively. Then you've got the forward, the expensive elite forward, Bridges versus Leonard. And then the two centers, right? Zubac and Mark Williams. On both teams, those three players are accounting for the vast majority of the production. I think all three players are pretty solid. And then it doesn't leave much for value on either team. I mean, Charlotte's interesting because it's like Bridges is outperforming LaMelo like every single game. I mean, if you just, obviously it's just a game log, but it is like literally every game. So it's kind of hard to justify paying more for LaMelo at, I think it's somewhat of a similar ownership to Bridges. Listen, forward's tough, and Bridges is, I mean, it's every night, right? You're getting like 20 shots involved in every statistical category. The minutes are always there, 35 to 40 minutes. It's hard to argue with it. And the matchup obviously is pretty good here against San Antonio. So, yeah, you are playing an expensive Bridges as chalk, and that sentence, taken by itself doesn't sound great, but I don't think what he's doing right now is really unsustainable given his role and who's on the team, and that hasn't changed. So I do think Bridges remains a really good play. LaMelo, I will say, has not been shooting the ball well at all. 3-point shooting, 3 of 11, 2 of 12, 3 of 10, 4 of 12. If they do start going through the hoop, he could potentially have a huge ceiling game. But we've been saying about LaMelo for years now, and just the consistency isn't there with him. So I still do think he's a good play. I do prefer Bridges if choosing between the two. I don't think I want both Bridges and LaMelo on the same team, kind of the same way I don't really want Harden and Kawhi on any individual roster. Mark Williams, curious your thoughts there. The thing I worry about him is the minutes obviously have not been super consistent. And we also know that his physical was bad enough where the Lakers didn't do the trade, right? So it's like, as we get closer to the end of the season, I know you don't want to project it one game, but he doesn't seem like a player who's going to be getting more minutes as time passes on here, right? Like, it seems like he would be a player who they kind of wind down a little bit. Not saying that's going to be tonight, but just in general, maybe the type of player I kind of want to lean away from as we go through the last few weeks of the season here.
Yeah, well, not only that, they have Nurkic and Diabate, who they kind of split up the backup minutes last game. And, I mean, the one thing I will call out with Mark Williams is he does have a ceiling at 7.6, right? He's got the ability to drop like 50 DK points. If the minutes are there, they're there. Also, the game could go a little bit smaller where Miles Bridges maybe plays at the 5. I mean, that's certainly possible. It's worth mentioning that this Charlotte team, like, they're playing this guy named Marcus Garrett. I was like, is this Miles Garrett on the court when I saw it the other day? Marcus Garrett, they're playing Nick Smith Jr., Seth Curry, Wendell Moore Jr. I mean, they're going a little bit deeper with some of their guards, which maybe that means they will go Miles Bridges at the 5 a little bit. I'm not sure, but they are playing Diabate and Nurkic and kind of mixing and matching them. And if one kind of goes on a run, yeah, they're going to ride that out a little bit, right? So there is some volatility there.
Have the Spurs been playing Sohan at the 5?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think I'll pull it up. I remember Mamu. So Dallas is a good example. I'll pull it up now. Mamu played the first half, but he did not play the second half in the last game. That was with De'Aaron Fox. Biyombo didn't even play the fourth, and they ran Jeremy Sochan. Jeremy Sochan came in at the 2:55 mark of the third quarter, and he played the entire rest of the game. So there are routes where you could see Sochan at the 5, right, with like a Harrison Barnes at the 4, and you could easily see Charlotte match it because they have enough of these wing guys. They could easily go on Miles Bridges at the 5, Josh Green at the 4, Daquan Jeffries at the 3, whoever they want at the 2 is like a guard, like a Nick Smith Jr., a Curry, and then put LaMelo at the 1. So, DC, basically, yes, you're 100% right about Sochan playing the 5, which is something I was leading with when discussing.
And I almost think that's what the Spurs prefer to do. It seems like sometimes, against certain teams, you've got to match up and you got to get Biyombo or whatever out there. But this could be a situation where I think that's what we're going to see. I think we're going to see Bridges play some at the 5, and this game maybe go smaller, which honestly makes Bridges an even better play, right? If he's out there for some minutes as the 5. So, yeah, makes some sense.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think they go bigger, then a Mamu Kalashevi, right? He's not going to pop today, but he's going to pop soon, right? Like, it's not the day to do it, but he's definitely someone that's like an April DFS hero that we've played.
And anyone still hanging on to an NBA roster spot will they'll get their chance to pop off over the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, but I like to look for the matchups, right? Like, we know a team is willing to go small, and to your point, DC, with the Sochan at the 5. We've seen them do this in the past when they were tanking, right? So, why wouldn't they do it again? It just makes way too much sense. So, we definitely align on the Sochan stuff. I think he's a good play. Can you talk about the backcourt a little bit? We're going to get some ownership on Castle. He's 22%. Vassell, he's 34%. He does have small forward eligibility and shooting guard eligibility. But talk about those two guards because they're clearly important plays on this slate. They're coming in at some of the higher owned plays because De'Aaron Fox is now out. And of course, I doubt Chris Paul is going out there to play 40 minutes tonight.
Yeah, you wouldn't think so. Are Spurs out of the playoff hunt? What's their deal? Do you know?
They're out and they're definitely tanking. They're like 4 or 5 games out of that seed, but they're not trying to get that.
Yeah. And this is the first game, right? Without Fox, has he missed any time since being traded over?
This is the first game. I believe it was yesterday that he got that. And when I read off the Sochan stuff at the 5 DC, that was with De'Aaron Fox in. And in that game, Stephen Castle, he still played 27 minutes with De'Aaron Fox in. Chris Paul played 25, and then Devin Vassell played 33. So, I don't think they're magically going to play Julian Champagnie a ton of minutes, right? That's just going to get allocated between those 3, I would assume. You
would think that Paul is kind of capped at 25 minutes from here on out, right? There's just no reason to push him any further than that.
Yeah, so his rotation, just to read it off to you, DC, he played the first 7 minutes, closed the last 5 in the first half. Then he played 8 minutes, and then he only played 5-6 minutes in the fourth quarter, and that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, he's going to have a huge chunk off between his playing in the first and second quarter and then the third and fourth. So it should be the Castle show, right? I mean, I know he's coming off a really bad game, but I would think that the Spurs want to. I mean, they've seen what they've got a good young player. They know that. Why not let him get out there and get out there for 35 minutes? So I think Castle's interesting, and then Vassell, right? Those two, I think are the biggest two that you look at. Sochan makes some sense. They still got enough wings, right? And Kelton Johnson and Barnes and Champagnie. I see the 3 of them: Castle, Vassell, and Sochan as the 3 I'm looking at most closely. Do you have anyone else in there? I don't think I'm playing CP3 even at the discount.
No, I agree on those 3. Harrison Barnes isn't the craziest play, but I think by the time we get all these plays, Grimes just got ruled out. Do I really want to play 4.6K Harrison Barnes? Probably not. So yeah, we agree there. One last thought with Charlotte. We both like Bridges. Sounds like way more than LaMelo Ball. I mean, I think LaMelo Ball is going to be 20% owned, especially as we gain more value. what is your opinion on LaMelo Ball? Because again, I don't like playing him. I typically go under, but I'm curious to see what you think in a matchup against the Spurs, which seems like a pretty easy
Again, I don't really want to play him with Bridges, but yeah, he's a fine play, LaMelo. I have no problem going there. And honestly, this game, I got to look more into the Spurs stuff, but potential game stack here, right? I mean, you know where the production's coming from Charlotte. It's Bridges and LaMelo, and then obviously some Mark Williams. And we think we know from the Spurs, and the Spurs guys are cheap enough you can kind of fit them together. What's the total on this game? It's got to be relatively high. 232.
Yeah.
So it does look like a really good game. I think you could make a case for, depending on how the value shakes out in those first two games, which we'll talk about soon. I like the Charlotte Spurs game, maybe the most of the night, potentially.
Yeah, and if you want a game stack option for you, here you go. Here's a game stack core, BC. If your core was Castle, Vassell, Bridges, Mark Williams, and SoCan, you're left with 5.2K for small forward or shooting guard, a guard, and a utility. That's very easy to build out.
You can make it work, yeah.
Yeah, 1,000%. So I definitely don't mind that. And SoCan's also center eligible and forward. So there's a lot of flexibility with some of these guys on your teams. And I know we spent a lot of time on that game, DC, but honestly, I think it's worth it because of the news there. With that, we did get Quentin Grimes ruled out. So we're gaining some Sixers value. We'll wait for a little bit more. And again, we will circle back to the Celtics game, the Sixers game, and break all that down for you guys. But we got one more game left. Cleveland and Memphis. Cleveland and Memphis. Obviously, the Cleveland guys are going to be owned, right? No Donovan Mitchell means there's clear usage going towards this team. It's only been one game since Mitchell's been out. Jared Allen, 6.4K in a matchup against the Grizzlies. That could easily go with Edie on the opposite side and just kind of agree to go big. Darius Garland, 7.7K. He's coming in at 32% ownership. Mobley, 8.6. It feels pricey, but I know he's been crushing. 28% owned. Definitely another guy to consider as a spend. Value-wise, I see Scottie Pippen at like 20% owned. Max Strus, Ty Jerome, we know they've been pretty solid guys for this team. And then, without Jaren Jackson Jr., we've definitely seen Desmond Bane and John Morant. They've played pretty well. They've shown ceiling performances to win GPPs over this stretch. At the price tag of 8.7 and 9.4, it does feel pricey, but honestly, I still think they're in play because of the ceilings that they have. And honestly, the ownership is very low. John Morant, 1%. Desmond Bane, 0.55. That's crazy to me, especially with Donovan Mitchell out in a game that could be way more competitive. So I am interested in these Grizzlies studs, and I am interested in these Cleveland guys that clearly benefit without Donovan Mitchell. Curious your thoughts on these expensive Memphis guys and some of the Cleveland values.
Yeah, the reason the Morant and Bane are projected at such low ownership is because they're projected lower score because Jaren Jackson Jr. is projected in right now, but no guarantee he plays, right? He's missed 5 games, still questionable with the ankle.
Yeah.
I think just as likely he sits as not. Aldama's still out. So you will definitely get ownership discounts from what they should be on both Morant and Desmond Bane if Jackson does indeed miss this game. So something to pay attention to there. They're projected much too low right now compared to what they will be if Jackson does miss. That said, if Jackson plays, you don't want to pay $9,400 for Morant or $8,700 for Bane, right? To me, it's dependent on Jackson missing before I want to pay those prices. Obviously, you're not dead if you're stuck with $9,400 Morant and Jackson's in there, but it's not the situation you would choose to be in. Obviously, if things broke your way, so if you do want to play the Morant Bane thing, I have no issue with it. I would want to have a plan on what I'm going to do if Jackson ends up playing, so I can pivot away from that to different players. Might need to backload a little bit in order to do that. But yeah, that's the main guys for Memphis for me. They're just kind of depending on Jackson. I guess you can go to a Zach Edey if you want to, but I usually just bypass the supposed fantastic value that Edey presents every night. And honestly, don't really regret it most nights on Edey, so I'll stick with that. Cleveland, though, you got to take a look at this team. Expected to be a high-scoring game. It's like they're not bad defensively. They just play at such pace, both these teams, that we should see a lot of possessions here. Of course, Donovan Mitchell opens up things for everybody else. I think Garland is a really interesting play here. Put a 55 fantasy points last time out, 24 shots. I mean, he went from, he's normally like 10 to 15 field goal attempts all the way up to 24 last time out. Didn't even shoot it that well from the field. Still had a monster game. I think you got to look at Garland. Jerome is in play, although the minutes aren't as secure as you might think, even with Mitchell out. At least that's the way it seems to be. And then Mobley is a guy who I do think can take on more workload with Mitchell out. He's interesting at 86. And then Allen, of course, is fine at 6,400 as well. So especially the Cleveland side looks really good to me, kind of across the board. And then Memphis is, of course, dependent on the Jaren Jackson Jr. news.
Yeah, and I think I'm jumping the gun a little bit with the Jaren Jackson stuff because I've looked into it. It's the first night of a back-to-back, right? And because it's the first night of a back-to-back, I'm assuming he sits now. He plays Miami tomorrow. So is there a chance he plays tonight and then sits tomorrow? Yeah, 1,000%. There's definitely a chance that that's how they do it. But I typically lean that way. We'll have to see, right? And, of course, you can make your adjustments. But, hey, if you want to adjust, you can adjust like some Cleveland guys, right? Like, let's say you have Desmond Bane. Let's say he's in your utility, right? Well, you can easily switch to an Evan Mobley if you want to. You know what I mean? And easily make that pivot. So there's ways to do it if you want to. But, yeah, obviously that news is going to be important. And still waiting on that news on some of the Sixers stuff. All right, let's talk about I don't know if there's anything else you want to mention with the Cleveland side. Like, do you have an opinion on Max Struss and Ty Jerome, both at 17% and 22%? I do think those ownerships could adjust downward if we get a lot of value that opens up. But do you have an opinion on Max Struss likely starting and then Ty Jerome off the bench?
I think both are fine plays. But, yeah, they seem appropriately priced to me. So, yeah, I actually lean Garland as my favorite play on the Cavs. You have a favorite play there?
Yeah, I probably rank it Garland 1, Allen 2, and then Mobley 3. I'll say this: Mobley's been awesome, but I just kind of would rather get to other options, I guess, as spends. And I feel like Allen and Garland have just break the slate upside more than Mobley does because of the price tag. What's the price tag? 8.6K Evan Mobley. If he gets 52, yeah, I'd sign up for it. But is that going to break the slate? No, I don't think it breaks the slate, right?
Yeah, to me, this is one where sometimes you don't got to overthink things. I mean, you've got Garland starting backcourt with Donovan Mitchell. You take Mitchell off the court for, a much less usage player. And of course, Garland's role changes a ton. So I really do like Garland quite a bit here.
Yeah, and if a Jaren Jackson Jr. is out, do you have any interest in Zach Edey at 4.9 or a Brandon Clark at 4.2? I am curious, are you going to get to any of those guys?
I never play Edey. Won't be planning to play either of those two guys, no.
It's that time of the year. It's March Madness. Steve loves his Zach Edey, but not today. I'm with you. I'm not really excited to play Zach Edey either. And honestly, Jay Huff's been playing. I don't know if he'll get minutes, but he's been playing pretty good. So maybe they'll start giving him some. I don't know. Doubt it in this matchup, but yeah, I'm not excited for old Zach Edey. All right, let's we don't have all the news, but we'll make a pivot to the Sixers side to talk about as best as we can for now. DC, no Quentin Grimes, Andre Drummond questionable, Kelly Oubre questionable, Justin Edwards, and Angel Reese's cousin, Alex Reese. I'm kidding, but yeah, Alex Reese is obviously questionable as well. It's a lot of pieces that are moving, right? And if Andre Drummond's out, that's going to obviously shake up the slate. If Andre Drummond's in, I think at 5.4, he's a really good play. If he's out, you'd assume Yabusele gets the start. I mean, Kelly Oubre at 6'8" with no Quentin Grimes. We've seen Quentin Grimes absolutely dominate without Oubre. Well, if Grimes is out, this could be a great spot for someone like Kelly Oubre. If a Kelly Oubre's out, that could help some of these other guys, right? You could see a boost to a Jared Butler at 4.6K, who I know is projecting pretty well, played 35 minutes last game. There's clearly plays that are going to pop here. I know it's not super easy to figure out, and the news is going to come through here in a second, DC, but with the Quentin Grimes news of him being out, What is that kind of giving you for your initial thoughts on the Sixers team?
Yeah, the question to figure out from my perspective here is what Philly's going to do just in terms of like ball handling and point guard play, right? I mean, Grimes kind of took over that role, or a lot of it anyway, in these last couple of games. Very heavy usage, very involved. You take him off. I'm not sure Oubre can really fill quite that role. I just don't think he's that quite that type of player. Does Jared Butler just almost by necessity kind of need to go off here, assuming he can? They're just down to bare bones at that specific position. What about Jeff Dowden? Looks like he can play a little bit as well. I think it's the guards for Philly. I know the Andre Drummond is the big news we're still waiting on, but Butler and Dowden are the two guys that I'm looking at most closely right now. What do you see? Because Lonnie Walker out too, right? I mean, they're just really, really thin.
Yeah. Also, not only that, like they talked about Yabu being a little bit limited too, and you could easily see him be limited here and not play that much. Also, Nick Nurse did say, this was posted in the Discord, news that came by not too long ago, Brissett and Jalen Hood-Schifino, they are available to play, and he expects the newcomers to play tonight. So I don't know how many minutes those guys are playing. I'm not saying I'm playing them because they're playing minutes, but even them getting 8 minutes, right, or even 10, that could muddy up a situation for other players.
Okay, so that's a big point against the love I had for Butler and Dowden, right? If they've got another point guard, Hood-Schifino in there, who he says is going to play. If they say a player is going to play, you got to assume that they're going to be in the rotation for, once in the first half and once in the second half for at least 10 or 12 minutes. So
that makes me think Oubre doesn't play, right? Like I would, that's my guess, but I could be wrong.
So now I think that makes sense as a guess, at least, that now we kind of need Oubre to be out, right? To be back in on, at least heavily back in on Butler and Dowden. And Hood-Schifino, I'm not going to play him unless he started for some reason, then maybe you could. But the Oubre news is pretty big. If he's out, Butler and Dowden are going to be tough fades for me, I think.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. And of course, like what if Edwards is out, right? If Edwards is out, that would obviously bump some of these other guys. And starting lineups are going to be important. The good news is we're going to get this, right? We'll know before lock. We don't really have to play the guessing game. As our guy K Falik says in the chat, I'll just wait for starting lineups, right? And I think that's kind of the right approach here, is wait for starting lineups, make your adjustments, and go from there. That's why we got the Discord chat for the people. And of course, if a Drummond misses, right, DC, that's a lot of usage to kind of go around. I don't know if that would somehow make you interested in Bona. And not only that, if the Celtics guys are out, well, that could adjust how I think about, some of these other plays. Or if Pascal Siakam's out, that might adjust how I think about these Sixers. So it's tough to figure out. But do you have any opinions on like the Drummond stuff?
I think I'm out on Drummond, even if he plays 5,400. Just don't trust the minutes. The production obviously is far, far from what it once was. And even Yabusele kind of seems like maybe he's running out of a little bit of gas here. He's played a lot of minutes unexpectedly this season. Just not a play I love at 5,100, even if Drummond's out. He obviously gets to start at center. So I think I'm probably going to be off the Philadelphia big men situation. It's the backcourt that I'm much more interested in.
Yeah, we seem to agree on the backcourt. And I think Butler is number one, followed by a Doughton or a Council. Like, I do think Council's a pretty good one. He's forward eligible too at 3.7K. So I think that's kind of my list. Do you have any other takes on that?
No, yeah, we're on the same page there. Yeah, the guards and the wings, I think, is where you want to go.
Yeah, and honestly, even if Oubre's in, I'm still going to be cautious with him at 6.8K. I just think it's worth being a little worried about.
Some of the big appeal to Oubre slates are that, like, he's going to play like 42 minutes and they just really don't have anybody else. But now, out of the playoff race at this time of the year, I don't think they're going to lean on him for that many minutes. There's just no reason to. So it removes his appeal, which was like the minute certainty that you kind of got before. I don't think it really exists right now. And you're paying for it. I mean, this is as high a price tag as we've seen for Oubre. So I'm not going to play him regardless.
Yeah, it's not like we're seeing him at like 5.2K and we're like, okay, like if he plays like those minutes, like we're screwed and it's just a guessing game. Like it's 6'8's expensive tag.
He can easily play, even if he got his 38 minutes, he might not get there at 6'8,
For sure. Let's get to the Pacers side of the ball. So Indiana, I mean, we don't have the Pascal Siakam news, but that definitely matters, right? Because that would clearly help Tyrese Halliburton at 8.7K. I don't love the Miles Turner price at 6'9". You could make a case that it helps him a little bit, but I'll admit I do not love the 6'9" tag. I think it would help the production of like a Benedict Mathurin at 5.3K. If you lose Siakam's usage, that's going to help him, right? That's going to help a TJ McConnell. Like it could help an Obi Toppin a lot at 3.5K. I can easily see Obi Toppin start. We know we've seen him go for massive games. So Obi Toppin looks like a really good play here. You could make the case. So I think you could start a Jarris Walker if they wanted to, but he could not close. I really think it goes to Tyrese, Benedict Mathurin at 5.3K. Those are two guys I want to key on, and probably Obi Toppin at 3.5K. But we did just get news that Siakam is in, so everything I basically said was pointless. DC, I still think these plays, even with Siakam in, they're fine tournament plays, right? Like, but now I'm definitely not interested in them. Like, we would have probably wanted to just get overweight on these guys, but Siakam being in, that definitely makes us, less excited about these Pacers.
Yeah, of course, if you're playing 150 lineups, you're not going to remove the Pacers from your pool entirely. But if you are playing a few lineups like I am, Indiana, not that exciting, right? First game of the night, you don't really want to lock into these questionable values. I don't think Halliburton or Turner are two of the better studs at their position, really. So, listen, it's a pretty good spot for Indiana against obviously a really bad Philly team, but I think you can do better than a pretty much fully healthy Indiana squad. So definitely more interested on the Philly side of that game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Seems like the Philly side's better for sure. I will say though, Tyrese at 8.7. He's had some big games.
I think he's now that we got Siakam in, I do think Tyrese remains the best play there. I don't mind that play at all.
Agree. Yeah, if you force me to pick one, like I'm playing Tyrese over Siakam. All right, let's shift to Miami first, and then we'll close it out with Boston. I assume you're not playing Miami at all. I mean, when I pull everything up, we got Alec Burks out, but Highsmith in, Jaquez, Robinson, Rozier, Ware, and Wiggins. They're all in. I mean, this Miami team is fairly healthy.
And they're all overpriced. So, I mean, you're just not getting to Miami, are you? I don't think so.
Hang on one second. Hello, Anthony. I'm on the show.
Oh, Big T, there he is.
That was Anthony. I thought I was on mute. He thought the show was over, but he's wrong. We're still going. We're churning along. I'll call him back after.
You can give us the extra 5 minutes. Come on, Big T, be better.
Yeah, I'll call him after the show though. But I wanted to let him know because I was wondering why he was calling. It had to be urgent. Maybe he needs me to help get something up for him. But let's get to Miami's overpriced, right? 9.3K for Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero. I know they're at home. I doubt the Celtics. I don't know if the Celtics are missing guys. I don't know if that's going to change your opinion on a Tyler Hero, a Bam Adebayo, or an Andrew Wiggins at like 6.4K. I mean, I just think it's a tough spot to play any of these guys. Like, I doubt I'm going to have any exposure on DraftKings. I'm curious your take, DC.
I mean, who would you even play? Who's the best play on Miami? I have a hard time making a case really for any of them.
If you forced me to pick Wiggins at 6'4", just because, he's kind of like that Tobias Harris safe play that might get me between 26 and 38, maybe. You know what I mean? Like that's, but I don't love it. I'll say that. So, and he's like the third option. Do I really want to play the third option against the Boston Celtics? That sounds terrible.
Yeah, I think Miami's an easy cross off, honestly. And
yeah, I mean, they might be they might be the easiest cross off on the slate. Would you agree on that?
Miami?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're probably number one. I think you're right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I've been stalling so we can get to Boston. Yeah, James, I will admit, Big T is the one who says do the shows for an hour. Yeah, I know. I thought he's probably busy and needs me to like do something with the slate.
To his credit, he did quickly hang up once he realized the show was still going. So, it's not too much of a hypocrite there.
Correct. So we'll give him a call right after the show. Make sure the boss man is okay, or I guess the boss man's JSU, right? P. Lally, we like to joke and say it's JSU because he hates that. But all right, Boston. I'm installing because I don't know what to do with it, DC. I've been waiting for Joe Mazzulla to get up to the press conference and say something, even though when he goes up there, he really doesn't say much. I'll say this. I don't like targeting Miami. I'm going to need guys out to play them, right? If Tatum's out, Brown's going to be a good play, right? If Brown is out, Tatum's a good play naturally. I'm assuming Porzingis doesn't play. I know he's had this illness. And if he doesn't play, I know Al Horford's been playing some really good basketball. I'm stalling to see if it's the front end of a back-to-back to kind of see if that maybe gives us some insight. Actually, DC, this is some interesting insight. They play tomorrow, but they play the Brooklyn Nets tomorrow at Brooklyn. Like, I assume you're not playing all your guys against Brooklyn. I assume if you're going to play some of your guys, right, it would be in this spot, if any. Drew Holiday is going to be in. Porzingis is in. Derek White is questionable. I know he's played most of the year. Al Horford, he's been updated to probable. I actually don't hate Al Horford at 5.1K if we don't get enough value. But we really need to figure out who's in and out, right? And it's clear if Tatum's out, Brown's good. If Brown's out, Tatum's a good play. I don't know what else to say. Maybe a Sam Hauser at 4-2 could be interesting, DC, but I'm struggling with these Celtics without this news.
Yeah, the big three to watch is White, Brown, and Tatum. And if one of those guys sits, the other two, specifically Brown and Tatum, become good plays. Like you mentioned, White gets a significant bump, in my opinion, as well. The one thing I wouldn't do, no matter who – did you say Porzingis is in? Is that confirmed?
Someone said he went through shoot around. I am seeing – let me just double check.
I haven't seen anything official.
I'm seeing questionable, but, dude, he's got this, like, weird fandom illness where, like, I'm sure he can easily, like, walk through shoot around, but I don't know how – I don't know if he's really going to play yet.
What I wouldn't do is even if, like, Tatum and Brown sit, don't fall for the Porzingis trap because there's no way he's playing a ton of minutes after missing, 2-3 weeks with a mysterious illness. So I would be really cautious with Porzingis, but yeah, otherwise you just got to pay attention to who's out for Boston. We've seen it so many times that honestly, we kind of know what to do with Boston when one of their two studs sit, the other becomes a good play. Derek White's in there and you just, add up the equation. And Boston, they're just so straightforward. They're just not like other production that comes up to ever take it. You kind of know where it's going to go on any given night if certain players miss. So should be relatively simple, I think, to react to the Boston news. Yeah,
I know people are saying in the chat that Horford is questionable. I'm seeing on Basketball Monster probable. I don't know. Who knows what they're doing with the Celtics. And again, it's the front end of a back-to-back playing Brooklyn tomorrow. You'd assume Peyton Pritchard is going to be, a lock button tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, I assume if they, like, I think Porzingis sits, one of maybe Brown or Tatum sits, and then, I don't know, I'm guessing Derek White plays, and then maybe he sits tomorrow. I don't know. It's all a guess, though, and I'm kind of stalling to hope we get the news. We did get the news that Trae Young is available, but it's hard to kind of analyze that. That's why we're in the Discord chat, right? We're trying to be there, updating you guys 30 minutes before lock. Once the lineup comes out, you can ask us questions. We sit there. We basically break it all down for you guys. If you do have questions, you could fire them in the chat. We can answer a couple questions as we stall a little bit for. I mean, we normally get an update by now, but apparently not today. Joe Mazzulla is not having it. One question in the chat, would you pair Butler and Doughton together? I mean, I would need a lot of these guys out to do that, DC, but curious your thoughts.
You need Oubre out for that. But if he is out, I do think that's a pretty strong pairing, one I might consider myself. So, yeah, just depends on the Oubre news.
Yeah, here's a good one from earlier. Does Bane have 50-point upside with JJ in? I think he has the 50-point upside, but the probability goes a lot further down with Jaren Jackson Jr. in, right?
Yeah, a lot. Of course he could, but he won't be on my team if Jackson's in.
Yeah. Trying to see if we got anything else. I mean, no, people are Jalen Williams out tomorrow. Yeah, we're getting all the stupid news for tomorrow, which is brutal. Because it's tough to obviously break down this Celtics news without having it. How about this, DC? Why don't we rank the studs? Like, so 9K and above. If you could pick your 3 favorite studs of the night, who would they be?
With the info we have now.
Yeah, which is what we got now. Obviously, it's tough to do. For Tatum's hard to put in that conversation without the info.
I think Miles Bridges is going in my lineup tonight. So Miles Bridges, we will go number 1. I will go with Harden 2, and I'll go Morant 3, but need Jackson to be out for that to be the case. But honestly, I'm putting. I know he's not over 9K, but I'm going to treat Mr. Garland like he is, like he should be. So I rank Garland as a stud as well.
No, that's fair. I like that. For me, we definitely have a similar 1 and 2. Like, I mean, Bridges is probably 1. I'd say Harden 2. If you told me to go a little off the board with another one, man, I think Tyrese has been awesome, and I expect it to continue. And the Sixers play no defense, so I think he's a good run back option if you wanted to kind of do that. I mean, we could touch the Lakers is going to be, obviously, this is a totally different slate. It's not DraftKings. Oh, here we go. We got some news, DC. We got some news. Andre Drummond out. Justin Edwards out. Oubre out. Okay, so, and Alex Reese is available. What does that do for the Sixers with the UDC?
You said Drummond and Oubre are out? Yeah.
Drummond, Oubre, and Justin Edwards. I actually think the Justin Edwards thing, this is where with Justin Edwards out, it kind of opens up things even more for the guys we were talking about. Like, maybe this opens up the door more for someone like Dowd. Maybe this opens it up more for a Ricky Council. You mentioned even stronger play.
You mentioned 2 players that Nurse mentioned that haven't been in the rotation but will be tonight. One of them was Hood Schifino. Do you have the other one handy?
Yeah, it's Hood Schifino, and the other one was, I can check the Discord. Let me just scroll up. It was O'Shea Brissett, who's like a wing kind of guy, and he's been a good fantasy producer. I don't know if he is in the pool. I know the other one is. Yeah, so O'Shea, I don't see him.
He played on the Pacers, I think.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, he did in the past. He's not in the pool today. The only guy that's actually in the pool is Hood Schifino. So you couldn't play Brissett, but that's definitely worth mentioning.
Brissett's not like a ball handler whatsoever. So Philly has essentially 3 guys who can handle the basketball: Butler, Doughton, and now Hood Schifino. I mean, beyond that, they're missing Grimes, Oubre, Walker, Maxey, Lowry, McCain. Just really, really thin beyond. So Doughton, I think, is my favorite 76er to play. I like Butler too, but I think Butler's maybe more likely to lose minutes randomly than Doughton is. Just a hunch. And then what about Ricky Council, 3,700? He's got to play minutes here, right? I know he hasn't played particularly well, but 33, 29 minutes the last 2 games where they had significantly more people than they do today. So I'm in on that Philly backcourt, I guess is my point.
Yeah, I also think this opens up the front court more with, I could see Bonus starting. And at 3.8K, if he's starting, I just think that opens it up a little bit more. I will mention all the guys that are the rotation, right? BG asked if it's an 8-man rotation. Let's figure that out. Yabusele, who's probably limited minutes. You never know. He could get maybe to 32, but we'll see. Butler, Edwards is out. We got Bona, Council, Doughton, Reese, Hood Schifino, and Brissett. So I am only counting an 8-man rotation. In DC, we know in DFS, when there's an 8-man rotation, we just fire on it, right? Like it's too, like you want 2 or 3 Sixers, I think, on all your teams, correct?
Yeah. Yes. Two for sure, at least, I think.
Yeah.
Do we know where Hood Schifino's been playing? It looks like he hasn't even been in the G League, but he is like a former.
He was on the Lakers earlier in the year.
So he really hasn't gotten any minutes in forever. And then
he played in the G League not too long ago, and he had 30 points, 5 rebounds. That's what it says on DK. Yeah. So, I mean, at 3K, he's got to be kind of in play now with the 8-man rotation. I mean, obviously, I like BG's. This is perfect. Butler, Doughton, Council. Those are like the core 3, and then I think it's Bona.
Yeah, the Hood Schifino stats weren't showing up on the G League website for whatever reason, but two out of his last 3 games, according to the DK blurb, were 30-plus point games. This is a spot where you sometimes see these guys, he checks in, maybe Philly's playing like shit for the first 6, 7, 8 minutes, and the shitty players that are playing ahead of him aren't playing well because they're not very good. And then, you get the rookie in there, right? And it's finally got a chance to play, and he makes his first couple buckets, and he's off to the races. Because let's be honest, those minutes between Jared Butler and Doughton and Council and Hood Schifino, I mean, they're entirely up for grabs, right? Like, it just depends on who's playing well. I mean, I kind of like Hood Schifino. He's a gamble, but I think he's going to have to play some minutes here.
I like it too. And honestly, like, I'm not expecting Yabusele to just go out there and play 40 minutes tonight, right? So, I don't know. It's something to be – I'm with you. I want to kind of gamble on these guys. We just got the Celtics news. Then we can give out plays of the day and get on out of here. Here's what we got. Tatum available. Jaylen Brown out. Jaylen Brown out is going to be huge for Jason Tatum. Clearly a good spend, especially with all this guard value we now have. Porzingis out. Derek White available. Horford available. And Porzingis out. I don't know if I said the Porzingis out twice, but Porzingis and Jaylen Brown. Those guys are out. The rest are in. DC, for me, that makes it pretty simple. I like Tatum as a spend-up forward. I think he's definitely in the conversation as one of the spend-up forwards. I don't mind Horford at 5'1". They are going to need his size. I mean, he's been playing really good, and he's been playing 30-plus minutes a night. And then I think maybe a Derek White is fine, but with all this value we have with the Sixers, like, I'm not dying to play a Sam Hauser or a Luke Cornett or anything like that. So for me, I want my values to be focused on the Sixers, and then I want to go up and probably grab a Jason Tatum or maybe an Al Horford as a cheap option at forward. But what's your kind of thoughts on the Celtics?
Yeah, I'm taking the Sixers value. No question about it. I'm taking those guards. And then Boston, Tatum and Derek White, right? Tatum, the number 1 there, but I think White a really solid play as well with Porzingis and Jaylen Brown out. So that slate's getting better, Mangun. I'm kind of liking this slate as we get closer to lock here.
Yeah, slate's shaking up to be fun. I'm with you. I kind of saw it and I was like, ooh, I'm kind of feeling this slate. I think it's going to be a fun one. So yeah, I like it on DK. So I'm sure I'll get into some more contests there. I guess we go to plays of the day, DC. All right. We'll go to you first. Who do you got? Who is your play of the day?
We'll pull the trigger on this one. Didn't get there till the end of the show, but we are going with Mr. Hood Schifino. Going to be, I assume, coming off the bench. I did finally get his 3-game game log here for his G League performances. 38 actual points per game over the 3 games. And 26.5 field goal attempts per game in those 3. So what do you know from that? Like, he's healthy enough to play big minutes, to get up shots. They need the scoring, nothing to play for. Former first-round pick, kind of new to the team. Seems like a perfect spot to let him let the youngster show what he can do. So Jalen Hood Schifino, come on down. Mom's basement play of the day.
Yeah, he's going to have TJ McConnell maybe covering him. That's not really I mean, he's got energy, but I mean, he's still TJ.
I'm not sure I love that part. TJ's a pest out there, but he'll get the job done anyway.
Sure. He can be a pest. I was curious because you went with the shitter yesterday, and DC, you got 26 Mo Bamba minutes, and he still didn't get there. That is pretty crazy. I didn't realize that happened, but
I guess it's still an L, but not as tough a one as
the 26 minutes is pretty crazy. I don't know.
If you would have been guaranteed 26 minutes at 3K, you would have been 90% owned. So
yeah. Absolute lock button. So I do like the Hood Scafino call, DC. So I'll get a sprinkle of him for sure. I'll try to get overweight on that. I'm going to go to a game that we talked about a bunch. I don't know if this was going to be your play the day before this, but
real quick, Mango, real quick, because this Philly situation reminds me a lot of the one from the other night when it was Jamal Sheed who busted and all the Toronto newcomer wings went off, right? Even a one or two off the bench. But it was like the veteran point guard that was 90% owned. I think that's going to be Jared Butler tonight as like a kind of a non-prospect type. He's the one whose minutes get squeezed, I think, for Hood Schifino. So final point there.
Yeah, no, I could see that. Downton is on the active roster. Underdog just tweeted it out. It's Butler, Downton, Council, Yabusele, Bona, Reese, Brissett, and Hood Scafino. And another thing to mention, DC, Bona and Reese, I doubt, are playing together on the court unless it's like the end of the fourth quarter blowout. Like those guys are occupying center minutes, not together on the court. So makes it even of a tighter rotation for those guards. That's why we wanted to target them and talked about it a lot. DC, again, I want to load up on these Sixers, but I'm not going to ignore the upside of Jeremy Sochan at 4.9K. I do think he's an interesting forward option. You could load up on some Sixers, play a Jeremy Sochan, and then just play like four studs and kind of call it a day if you want to. But I think he's definitely got upside at 4.9K, so I'll go with him as the play of the day. But it's clearly a Sixers slate. You're going to want to load up on these guys. Do not ignore them. Get in the Discord chat using that code RPS15 for 15% off. We can break down the rest of it for you guys, help you answer questions, and give you the rest of the news that we're waiting on. And the rest of the news is as followed. We're waiting on Dante Exum, PJ Washington, Brandon Williams, Cole Anthony, KCP, Jaren Jackson Jr. And then, of course, if you're playing the night slate, we got you covered there as well. But, DC, final thoughts before we get on out of here?
Yeah, should be a fun slate. So hopefully we'll see some RPS up top.
All right. Hopefully RPS is at the top of the leaderboards and we keep hammering it home. For me, DC and Van Gogh, we'll see you guys later.